morning, everyone. It's, as always, awesome to be here. You know, I think we could divide the people in this room into two very distinct groups. There are those whose cultural vernacular includes the terms LEM, Eagle, Saturn V, Capcom. And then there are those for whom those terms are either vaguely historical or absolutely meaningless. I am squarely in the first camp. When I was growing up, I lived and breathed NASA and all things space. In fact, I grew up with this model rocket in my bedroom. It only flew once because its first flight was a CATO, which is model rocketry talk for catastrophic failure. You see, this model had 3 engines, and getting them type C if you were into that sort of thing, and getting them to ignite all at the same time was really difficult. Well, at least it was for me. So on its maiden flight, only 2 of them ignited, and its trajectory was a bit more like that of a pop bottle rocket than a moonshot. Anyway, this model was far too valuable for me to lose or wreck, so it spent the rest of its life on a bookshelf above my desk. In 1969, after the first moon landing, my Christmas present to my mom was this scrapbook that I made by cutting out pictures from Life and Look magazines. Now, of course, Apollo 11 being the first actual moon landing got all the press, and this is the 50th anniversary of that landing, and you're probably wondering, why do I need to sit through more press about the 50th anniversary of the moon landing? So let's just set Apollo 11 aside, because we space nerds know that Apollo 8 was a more impressive flight. Apollo 8 was the first manned mission to leave Earth's orbit. It was also the first manned mission to use a 3-stage rocket. The first stage lifted the Apollo craft, all 6.2 million pounds of it, through liftoff and 42 miles upward. It used 5 engines, and they all lit at the same time, which was really a good thing. The second stage propelled the craft into Earth orbit at about 119 miles. And the new third stage, well, that was reserved for sending the command service module and the lunar lander out of orbit and to the moon, in what was poetically called TLI, or translunar injection. Now, being that space nerd, it's kind of fun for me to think about the Tessitura Network as having 3 stages as well. Our first stage started in 1999, when we finished building the original software at the Metropolitan Opera. We were suddenly faced with this problem that there was lots of interest from outside the Met in what we were doing, and we had no clear idea what to do next. Well, interestingly, there were parts of the Apollo program that had a sort of make-it-up-as-you-go-along quality to them as well. You see, Apollo 8 was originally intended to be just another orbital test of the new Saturn V rocket. And Apollo 9 was supposed to be the first flight to go to the moon. President Kennedy had challenged the nation to land on the moon by 1969, and it was already mid-1968. So in August of that year, NASA made the audacious decision to change the program completely and send Apollo 8 and the not yet quite ready flight crew from Apollo 9 to orbit the moon. Okay, now, our audacious decision was not quite that noteworthy. But in December of 1999, 2 of us from the Met decided to attend the January 2000 International Ticketing Conference in Albuquerque to check out the state of the industry. We actually ended up showing Tessitura to a few people in my hotel room, and that prompted this flurry of emails between some of the early adopters. Here, from the Lyric Opera, well, my ticket manager attended Intix and saw this unofficial impresario demo. Anybody know any details? And the San Francisco Symphony. I saw the product and was blown away. I have been to the mountaintop and seen the promised land. Okay, maybe just a little bit over the top, but maybe just a little prophetic as well. In 2001, I met Jack, and he agreed to facilitate our first TLCC in Santa Fe. At that meeting, the then 7 organizations running Tessitura agreed to form a collaborative, cooperative partnership to fund, govern, and support the network. So it's the marriage of the technology that was then running those 7 organizations and the spirit of collaboration that was present at that first meeting that's the spark we see reflected in this room today, with all of us advancing the business of arts and culture. The rest of our first stage saw us form our first board of directors, hire our first real staff, build our first API to power e-commerce, bring hosting and access control to the network, and expand our membership to 250. All right, not to extend an analogy to its absolute breaking point, but First Stage Children's Theater in Milwaukee joined the network in our first stage, with our very own Karen Elliott as their then business systems manager. So that was stage 1. But just as with Apollo 8, while our first stage got us off the ground, it did not really put us into a stable orbit. So in 2008, the board and the network leadership began planning for Tessitura Network Stage 2. And they saw that only with sort of a major re-envisioning of technology and approach would Tessitura be set up for a bright and stable future. And this re-envisioning became known as the Next Generation Project. Now, the Next Gen Project had it as its goal to significantly increase the functionality of the software, re-architect our technology to be web-based and service-oriented, and build a new Tessitura API-powered platform that would easily integrate with outside applications and outside technologies. To kick off this process, we held a summer-long series of meetings in which network staff and members laid out their visions of the future. Now, here you can see Don in one of his typical, please, please, please just dream with me poses. And in the middle there, you can see Ron, and I'm guessing he's explaining to Don how things will actually work. And there, on the right, you can see what happens when you let software developers dream at a whiteboard. So the finale of this process, this summer-long process, was the Next Generation Summit. And that was a meeting attended by 80 members of the network, representing all the countries we were in, all genres, all job descriptions. And that meeting, held 10 years ago this month, right here in Chicago, just a couple of miles north of here, was 3 days of intensive listening, talking, drawing, and dreaming. And it so embodies our spirit. Out of that meeting came the blueprint for our second stage roadmap. Let's take a look at just some of what we planned at that summit. The Next Generation Summit is where the new constituent household model that was a primary feature of version 11 was first envisioned. Here you can see Ray from the Science Museum of Minnesota. He's explaining Esther, a museum attendee persona, and her family. And there on the left, that's the result of a group session where we started to map out all the different relationships that we wanted to track. We also mapped out what Sven, our programmer persona, would be able to accomplish with the new API. And that's functionality that's now powering websites, third-party applications, and integrations. Resource scheduling for education, we talked about that at the summit. Well before consumer privacy and data protection were the topics that they are today, we were talking about it and worrying about it a little bit, as you can see here, and then providing new privacy functionality in version 14.1. Just as we're doing here this week, we talked a lot about analytics. You know, T-Stats was only a year old at this time, and we were already talking about its next generation, and then drawing pictures of what would eventually become Tessitura Analytics. Several of our hopes and dreams exercises envisioned a mobile world that we're now seeing play out with Tessitura and TN Express Web. And somehow we even found the time to plan this year's conference with an exercise that we called What Will We Be Talking About at TLCC 2019? Exploring what is an event, customizing your dashboard with widgets, DIY consumer personalization, introducing fingerprint tickets. Now, I know that none of these exact sessions are on the agenda here this week, but I don't think we were very far off. And now think about everything we've accomplished as a result of the planning that went on in that meeting and the work that we've been doing during our stage 2. the new constituent model, plans and portfolios, pricing and messaging rules, resource scheduling, the new Tessitura API, the business intelligence initiative, including Tessitura Analytics, a completely redesigned and rebuilt TN Express Web, and so much more. And yes, just in case you were wondering, Second Stage Theater in New York joined us during our second decade. So we're still working on building on this blueprint every day as we work on the next version of Tessitura. So let me just show you a little bit of that. The primary feature that we're working on now in version 16 is a complete rebuild of the constituent area of Tessitura as a web application. And that'll be able to be used on its own in any browser as part of Tessitura Web, or as you can see here, embedded in the larger Tessitura Windows client. And after talking with many of you, we've taken the opportunity to insert and add some new constituent functionality as well. Like, for the first time, the ability to easily add a photo of each of your constituents. We're also going to make it easier to add constituent-based documents, including for the first time the ability to attach documents to customer service issues and to plan giving records. You know, over the last 18 months or 2 years, we've worked really hard with the member advisory committee, with our implementation team, in roadmap sessions here at TLCC, to map out all the new membership functionality that we need to support all the different ways that you're now running your membership programs. So in version 16, you'll see new membership functionality such as the ability to have pricing rules and discounting for memberships, automated benefit and entitlement tracking for memberships, perpetual and sustaining memberships, and multi-name memberships, as well as much more. NSCAN, oh, go ahead, it's okay. NSCAN, our access control software, is undergoing a re-architecting. We're going to make it much easier to insert your local business rules into your NSCAN configuration, plus the new version of NSCAN will work with all the new membership features of version 16. We're adding new functionality to Tessitura Analytics, including the ability to analyze constituent interactions. So we want you to use analytics to build deeper relationships that lead to deeper engagement and increased revenue. Our constituent experiences, they're based around art and experiences. And it's those relationships, those touchstones, those touch points that will surface with analytics in version 16. Finally, we continue to innovate with TN Express Web, strengthening its ability to provide a robust, easy to design, easy to configure, fully responsive e-commerce platform for all Tessitura users on all devices. So right now, we're in the middle of adding mobile ticket delivery, including the ability to call up any upcoming ticket from your account history. So now I've got some exciting news to share with you. You know, as we enter our third stage, the growth of the network, the expansion of our technology has given us an opportunity this year to reevaluate all the ways that we design, produce, and deliver software. And as a result of that evaluation, we're in the midst right now of combining our product-based development departments into one, with unified engineering and quality assurance teams. And very, very importantly, for the first time, we're forming a dedicated product management team, which you'll hear about shortly. You know, delivering software to power solutions is such a vital part of our mission that it permeates many, many departments besides development. Implementations, consulting, support, hosting, extended services, integrations, each of those teams works in some way to deliver technical value to you. So I'm going to increase my focus on making sure that all the software, all of our software, is consistently written, tested, delivered, and supported. And so now, we find ourselves back in Chicago, 10 years after the beginning of our second stage and second decade. You know, the majority of the goals and dreams that we talked about at that Next Generation Summit have actually been accomplished. And much more has happened that we never could have envisioned, such as our amazing growth. We also know that without the risks and the vision of the early members and the forethought of the Next Generation project, that Tessitura would not be what it is today. And so now, At the end of our second stage, at the end of our second decade, we stand ready to ignite the engine on our own TLI, or Tessitura Lunar Injection. So please join me in welcoming Kristin Darrow, our new head of product.
Chuck, thank you. Thank you and good morning. What a thrill to be on stage here at TLCC, and just an honor to talk a bit about our future direction for Tessitura technology. You know, as I thought about this talk and Apollo 8, I kept having a recurring daydream that would almost give me vertigo. It still does when I think about it. I kept imagining what it was like to be on that ship that Chuck was describing as it sped up to 24,000 miles an hour, 24,000 miles an hour, to escape Earth's gravity, and for the first time in human history, pull the nose of a ship that was in orbit and point it directly out of that safe and familiar orbital arc and aim it directly into the deepest dark of space, Earth receding in the windows. Can you imagine what that would have been like? I imagine for my own sanity that connected to the ship as it flew was an invisible tether of science and technology. And not just science and technology, but new science and new technology as that tenuous tether to Earth. Mounted on the wall behind the astronauts as they flew was a metal box about the size of a suitcase. In it was the smallest and most sophisticated computer that had ever existed, the Apollo guidance computer. Propelled by this notion of getting a ship into space, NASA had pioneered the use of small slices of silicon or chips to mount those newfangled integrated circuits to. And some of those first silicon chips were on board Apollo 8 as it made its epic journey out of Earth's orbit. In-flight computer control was a first with this journey. So it turns out that the epic voyage of Apollo 8 was so much more than just human beings breaking free of Earth's orbit for the first time and going to the moon. It turns out that that 70-pound metal box also contained the blueprint to the modern computing age as well. My career here at Tessitura has been to build our web and digital products. And like many of us in the room, I think you can identify with this. I was focused for so long on this finite thing called digital. And now there's this recognition that digital and technology are really terms that have merged, almost synonyms, terms interchangeable. I am thrilled to say that in October, as Chuck said, I take a new role here at Tessitura as head of product, bringing my digital focus to plotting the future direction of the entire Tessitura platform. My new team will be responsible for integrating all of the applications across the Tessitura platform, creating clear and consistent and beautiful designs, and creating a unified vision and product roadmap for the future. And speaking of what's coming in the future of Tessitura technology, you just heard a bit about what's coming with version 16. I want to take a look ahead beyond that beautiful new constituent interface, whole new membership model that Chuck just described that's coming with version 16, and focus on what we're thinking about as we leave the shore of version 16. Starting with a topic that is admittedly incredibly and deeply complex, and perhaps the most boring topic I could possibly lead off with for a technology future talk, payments. And yet they're very important to all of us. So as consumers, we've really all normed now to the mobile payment experience of Apple Pay, Google Pay, Alipay, others. And so we're looking at options for the future to unify that mobile experience or the online experience of payments to the in-person experience of payments, all while not losing sight of PCI compliance and security as well, of course. We're focused on making sure that Tessitura as a platform is usable by everybody. You'll hear tomorrow morning, as Dawn said, from Sina Bahram, accessibility consultant and our consultant on this important topic that remains a priority with every line of code that we write. We're making great progress, as you know, making Tessitura a web-based application with new browser-ready screens, ready with new features and functionality as it rolls out. And as you heard with version 16, memberships and constituents getting also the web treatment with version 16 as well. And TN Express Web, a majority of us are using TN Express Web for e-commerce to power your transactions online. And you'll know that we just re-envisioned and re-released this entire platform with version 7. And as we hear, we've got about 200 sites live on this platform already, more going live every single day. As we hear of nips and tucks to make to the platform, we're continuing to roll that in week over week, and we'll continue that forward beyond version 16 as well. And finally, an area that we've always done very well, selling general admission ticketing, but we know for large-scale GA events, we can do that a bit more efficiently. So we're tackling some improvements to this area as well. So these are some things that we are looking at as we finish up version 16 work and head off into the future. But I want to pivot now to something that frankly can't be more about the future, more about our technology and platform strategy, or about the company strategy. In fact, it's big enough, I will call it our own stage 3 product and technology leap out of orbit and into our future. And it's really all about this: the great expansion of data and technology brought about by this growing digital world, this crazy world that we all live in here today. From our founding mission, founding moment, we were really based around one idea, and that was to know the customer. And what it meant to know the customer in 1999 at our founding, to 2009 when we sat a few miles away from here at that summit and talked about data and what it meant to know the customer, to this week as we all sit in these rooms and discuss knowing the customer, it's all been vastly different from one decade to the next, and will assuredly be again vastly different by TLCC 2029. I think it's interesting to reflect back that as a technology industry, we've really focused the last couple of decades on perfecting the art of e-commerce. As consumers, none of us need to be told anymore what a shopping cart is or basket. We don't even need that little shopping cart icon in the upper right screen anymore. We all know what it is to authenticate or log into a website. We all have cemented deeply into our consumer brains this firm expectation of instant gratification, next day delivery. E-commerce is well established, but we've tipped now solidly into a new era, which I will call the era of the maturing digital consumer, a dust storm of innovation, where all of the data that the web has amassed over the past couple of decades is finally converging with a cheaper, more affordable computing power, more easily and readily available computing power that it needed. And where technologies like machine learning and artificial intelligence, which you just heard Catherine talk about, they're coming alongside to make sense of all of that data in exciting new ways. So it's really this laddering off of technologies and a whole flurry of new technologies and new opportunities emerging. This is not the e-commerce of the past. One of the fastest moving areas in the entire sector of technology right now is in a field called marketing technology, and for good reason. It's because the world has amassed this data and we are finally starting to make sense of it. So I think it's interesting to say, as good as Amazon and Google may appear to be at knowing us as consumers, I think that actually we're only in the beginning stages of an exciting time of change for what it will mean to know the customer, and to know the customer and to do so ethically and with privacy standards intact. So the question is, what does CRM mean for arts and culture when there is more customer data and it's more fragmented than ever before? What does customer service mean when consumer expectation blurs from online to offline? And what do you need us to do as your customer data hub to unify and connect the relevant data for you? We spend a lot of time thinking about how to answer these questions, how to build tools and services to help you harness the opportunities of today's digital and data landscape. In fact, I would say that responsibly leveraging the relevant data in this fast expanding data world is our third stage product and technology focus, our big leap out of orbit. So how are we doing that? How are we thinking of doing that? We've got a really keen focus on making the customer data that you have even more actionable and allowing you to expand on that data as you see fit. It's often said that one of the most powerful predictors of consumer behavior is from what's called first-party data, or data that you collect as you interact with the customers directly. When you took that membership renewal phone call, what else did you learn about the customer in that phone call? What are their interests? What does their order history tell you? All of that stuff. When they were on your website and they purchased those tickets, Did they give another production or exhibition or set of dates a hard look before they bought the tickets that they did? Did they abandon their cart? And if so, what was in that cart? This is all data that you own now. And some of you are making fabulous use of it. But in our third stage, we want to help make that actionable easier. Starting with a platform that we released last year, Tessitura Analytics. Tessitura Analytics is built to assemble or aggregate, to analyze, and to make actionable your data. This is a tool built for this era, and it's the foundation for so much more to come. In version 16, as you just heard Chuck say, we're adding on to it in order to make sense of customer touch points or interactions with Tessitura Analytics. So imagine that your customer comes to your website, logs in, goes to your hours and location page, that interaction can land in Tessitura alongside other interactions that came before or after it, giving you a clear picture of what their journey has been and maybe what their headspace is, where they're heading next. So how does that data get into Tessitura? Well, with version 16, we're also expanding the API to allow you to add any external data, customer data that you find relevant directly into Tessitura as well. So you can stack it up next to Tessitura, crunch it up in Tessitura Analytics, and make use of that data as well. So the summary is that with version 16, assembling, analyzing, and making actionable your customer data to communicate with them better will be even easier. Speaking of making things actionable, many of you are using a marketing automation tool now in order to set up customer journeys to follow the customer across mobile, social, email, in-person, phone, whatever it is, and then tailor the communication with them as they go. So now imagine you've got that abandoned cart, right, that I talked about, that you tie that to an automation that can follow up with that customer for you, and then push the results of that communication stream back into Tessitura to fuel future interactions. We have in our ecosystem today a powerful marketing automation tool called Prospect 2, built on a leading automation platform based here in Chicago, actually, called ActiveCampaign. There's other partners in our midst that are doing great automation work like Wordfly, like Capacity Interactive. This is an area that's very active for us from a product evolution and from an integration standpoint, and you rest assured that you'll hear much more from us in the future about marketing automation. And speaking of our partner ecosystem, we know that successful technology companies are not writing every line of code themselves. So it's just too big at this point to do that. We feel strongly that as Tessitura, we should be pushing our resources toward writing the software that we can write better than anyone in the world, and then opening up strong partnerships with those who can write something better or already have. As such, we are in ongoing dialogue with all kinds of technologies and opportunities, including with some of the largest tech companies in the world, as you heard, Microsoft, who's here this week. Now, we don't yet know where these technology partnerships might take us, but we're excited about it because it could be an AI partnership, it could be an integration with a customer data platform or some other part of that fast-moving marketing tech frontier that I was talking about. We don't know where these new things will end up, but we do know that just like today, just like having Prospect 2 in our ecosystem today and others, that partnerships play a vital and key role to our success moving forward as well. And finally, as we think about propelling into our stage 3, one more strategic direction I wanted to touch on here today. And frankly, it's an area that I hope doesn't get much notice by you, but it's important strategically, so I wanted to mention it. You trust us as your company to steer our resources in a place that will allow us to best harness the opportunities of today. As we add the new product team and unify the Tessitura technology resources of the company, we are doing so in order to really face all of that change in the data and technology landscape head on. Now, one area that we hope that you actually will really notice, it will be quite visible of this company in internal alignment that we're doing. Coming with version 16 for the first time in Tessitura history, we are releasing one upgrade to the entire platform. Version 16, how about one upgrade or one version number for a single platform? That means if you're using the box office application, TNU, InScan, whatever it is, it will be one seamless process for you. Thank you. I'm excited about it as well. So This all really comes beautifully now full circle, because where we are headed in our third stage as we propel ourselves out of our own orbit and into the future, it could not be closer aligned to our founding vision to know the customer. And of course, that founding vision is all in service of helping you do your jobs to connect more people to culture. Perhaps then we can look back on this founding vision of Tessitura a little bit like the Apollo 8 astronauts as they looked at that first glimpse of Earth from the moon that first time, with fresh eyes and a really greatly expanded vision of where they came from. And now I would like to welcome to the stage friend and colleague Andrew Recinos, president of the Tessitura Network.
A three-stage rocket propelled Apollo 8 to the moon. And as Kristin and Chuck have said, a three-stage rocket is actually an apt metaphor for the steady rise of the Tessitura Network. Stage one was liftoff, giving you a unified technology, a unified methodology built just for you. And as we ascended through the atmosphere, it became very clear that we were onto something. More than a technology, more than a methodology, we became a community to bring unity to the business of arts and culture, which led us to stage two. As Chuck said a decade ago, dozens of you joined us here in Chicago to help us dream of the future together. And in July of 2009, we ignited that second stage engine and everything accelerated. So what have we accomplished in the last 10 years? Well, based on those initial discussions, in the past decade, we've re-architected our platform and added massive capabilities to our technologies. In the past decade, based on your needs for Tessitura expertise, we've added dozens of support specialists, whole new consulting programs, and launched the Tessitura Center for Professional Development to foster continued Tessitura education. In the past decade, we created the Tessitura Innovator Series to bring this community's thought leadership to the world, formed the Leadership Summit to enable executive knowledge sharing, and built the Tessitura User Group program that now has user groups in 60 different cities around the world. In the past decade, we've extended our reach from 6 countries to 10. Built our team from 42 to 239 experts, welcomed new organizations to this community for a total of 664, and opened our arms to whole new sectors so that we can fully embrace the world of arts and culture. And in the past decade, the Tessitura Learning and Community Conference has more than tripled in size and is now the largest cross-genre global gathering of cultural professionals in the world. Our second stage has been exhilarating. It's been exciting. It hasn't been without a little turbulence along the way, but all in all, it has been a hell of a ride, and we are amazed at what this community has achieved together. And yes, our co-founders, Jack Rubin and Chuck Reif, they are rightly proud of where we are today, but they are not surprised. As Jack said to me, one of the first times we ever met, Tessitura is here to save the world, one cultural institution at a time. And so here we all stand, Jack and Chuck and Kristin and me and the whole team and all of us poised to ignite our third stage engine. Now, as Kristin and Chuck have said, when Apollo ignited their third stage engine, humans left the Earth's orbit for the first time, a truly seminal moment in history. In mission control that day was a young Michael Collins, who would one day travel to the moon himself. He was in charge of communications with Apollo 8. And kicking off that remarkable moment, he said these simple words. He said, "Apollo 8, you are go. with TLI. As Chuck has said, TLI stands for Translunar Injection. It's the technical term that means lighting that third stage engine and vaulting those guys to the moon. Now, Michael Collins is 88 years old now, and he was interviewed last year about that incredible moment. And he had this to say. He said, "Translunar injection? Sounds like some kind of medical procedure." I said to those guys, "Your go with TLI, but boy, do I wish I had that moment to live again." Because instead I would have said this. I would have said, "Apollo 8, you may now break the surly bonds of Earth and dance the sky, Apollo 8, dance the sky." Michael Collins, a scientist and explorer, used imagery, poetic language, and dance to describe that singular moment in humanity. What better inspiration for us and for the world of arts and culture as we embark on our third stage? So what should Tessitura's third stage look like? What should we do to dance the sky? Well, as a quick reminder, all of our big goals have seemed unachievable the first time we said them out loud. Our goal for stage one was virtually impossible, to create a member-owned, nonprofit technology company devoted to arts and culture that was successful. 18 years in, we've been pretty successful. Goal for stage two, equally insane, to rethink, reimagine, rewrite, and re-architect our already successful technology without entirely overturning our existing business and, in fact, growing it. We've managed that too. So what should our third stage look like? What should that goal be? The goal for Apollo 8, of course, was to break the surly bonds of Earth and reach the moon. What's our next challenge? Well, I think about those words from Jack all those years ago, saving the world one cultural institution at a time. I think about what Kristin just told us about the future of our product and that important need to connect people with culture. I think about what Chuck reminded us from the founding of the Tessitura Network, that we're here to advance the business of arts and culture. If you take all three of those statements and you propel them out to their ultimate conclusion, what does that goal look like? Well, I'll tell you what I think. I think it looks like this: that every human in every community that our members serve has culture as a meaningful part of their life. Possible? Plenty of people would say it's not. I would agree that it's not possible for any one of our organizations to have that kind of reach. No matter how small you define your community, no matter how big your organization, I doubt any one of us could say that every single human in our community has culture as a meaningful part of their life. Not alone. But we're not alone. You're not alone. We are part of a network of 664 cultural organizations in 10 countries. We estimate that something around 20,000 cultural professionals consider themselves part of this community. We already serve hundreds of millions of people, sell hundreds of millions of tickets, raise billions of dollars for culture every year. We are a force in the world. And here is the most important part. We like each other. We actually get along. We look for opportunities to collaborate already. Can you think of any other organized community devoted to arts and culture that has the alignment, the reach, and the potential that we do? So what if that is our impossible goal for stage 3? That we work towards a day somewhere out in the future, leveraging our technology, our methodology, and our community to work to a day that every human in every community that we serve has culture as a meaningful part of their life. How would we do that? I have some thoughts. To begin with, every single member of this community would have to continue to grow your audiences and expand your reach and thrive as businesses, which makes it incumbent on us, as Kristin has said, to work with you to provide ever more robust technologies and methodologies to help you know your customer and connect your culture with your humans. But that wouldn't be enough. We would have to invite many, many more cultural organizations into this community to get that kind of reach. And even then, we would need more. As Kristin has said, we would need more partners, global technology and service partners, to provide us scale and expertise. And then, just maybe, that would give us enough thrust and enough lift so that all of us together, this community of symphonies and operas, dance companies, theaters, performing arts centers, galleries, museums, science centers, education, zoos, aquariums, public media, together could provide wonder to all of our very youngest and comfort to all of our very oldest and joy to all of those living in the margins, and fill up the heads and the hearts of everyone in our communities with beauty and knowledge and creativity and understanding and compassion. Imagine that world. So I have a question. Could we do it? A lot of people would say we can't. I would say, if not us, then who? Plenty of people said that NASA would never get to the moon. Plenty of people told Chuck and Jack that their crazy little business idea would never work. Plenty of times, this community has started off in a new trajectory without knowing where it would lead, without knowing all the incredible places it would take us. For instance, we didn't know at TLCC 2011 that when a group of you participated in a roadmap breakout exercise, that you would be instrumental in helping us develop what became Tessitura pricing rules. And we didn't know that 7 years later, the Museum of Science in Boston would enact a new program that provides free admission to 22,000 foster kids in Massachusetts every year, a program they told me would not have been possible or actionable without Tessitura pricing rules. Well, here's the thing. The Museum of Science in Boston, they weren't there at TLCC 2011. They weren't even part of the community back then. But some of you in the room here today were there. And if you were part of that exercise, please know that you played a part in bringing world-class science education to tens of thousands of foster kids in Massachusetts. But back then, we didn't know. We didn't know in 2009 at the Next Generation Summit that the ideas and the insights that you would provide us would play a role in helping people in one of the remotest parts of the planet. Just last April, Jeremy Dixon and I met with Jessica Matchin, who is the executive director of the West Australia Ballet in Perth, Australia. And Jessica told us about their community engagement programs to install teaching artists and former dancers in some of the poorest areas of their state, in the schools and the communities there. Some of these areas that she referred to as not the third world, but the fourth world. Areas where school truancy hovers around 90%. Areas that have been ravaged by unemployment and drug dependence and suicide. And areas where the ballet is working with the community to come in and fight back with culture. placing teaching artists into those schools for extended engagements. And the ballet is seeing that when they do that, truancy rates plummet. Kids turn their lives around, take pride in their newfound skills, and learn life skills like teamwork, like connection, like athleticism. Those communities have long since lost hope, but now they've got a spark of it again. And I am hardly suggesting that Tessitura is saving those lives. But I will say this. The ballet's noble work is greatly enabled by the funding and relationships that they're able to manage in Tessitura. And the Tessitura tools that they use to do that, households, affiliations, associations, plans, were first envisioned by you 10 years ago, right here in Chicago. But we didn't know. We didn't know that someday our Tessitura community would play a role in improving their communities. So what does Tessitura's third stage look like? Well, wouldn't it be amazing if it looked like a lot more of this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this, leading us to that audacious, impossible goal that every human in every community we serve has culture as a meaningful part of their life. We don't know exactly when, we don't know exactly how, but we do know where to start.
With you.
Because the best ideas for this community always start with this community. So we've got some questions.
What are your dreams for the future of Tessitura?
What will the Tessitura community be accomplishing in 2029?
What will we be talking about at TLCC 2029? And we know that the best ideas in this community often start with markers on whiteboards. So out in the foyer, we have comment boards and markers. Please stop by and tell us your dreams, tell us your biggest ideas.
Give us the fuel to light our third stage.
So that we may dance the sky, Tessitura. Dance the sky. Thank you.
Thank you.